I wanted to introduce everyone to Chantel Thomas. She's a dear colleague of mine. We've worked together for, it was about 1 or 2 years. It feels like
Yeah,
longer.
2 years. I feel like it's yeah. One
Yeah.
year. Oh, I think you got the lucky number. I think it's like a year. Yeah.
It feels like I've known you longer though. But you being a Southern girl, like we
I think it's
automatically
a
connect.
southern thing. I think it's a southern
Right.
thing.
Right. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna give you the floor, and you're gonna be doing inclusive communication through meeting circles, and I'm excited to hear your story, your session, and I will let you take it from here.
All right. Thank you, Elizabeth. I appreciate it. And I appreciate all of you guys joining me today. I'm really passionate about really creating a sense of belonging in the places that I inhabit. And I've had an opportunity to sit at the table in corporate America, right? And as an observer, one of the things that I always I'm looking for is people's sense of comfort at that table, right? I think we're all challenged by like finding that sense of connectedness and comfort inside of spaces in our workplaces, right? So I'm really spending the time here today using meetings as a microcosm of how you can have more inclusive practices because I'm really I do it as a profession, but personally I'm really drawn to it and it's a passion of mine. And so one of the things that you'll find, right, as I go through this presentation today about my own communication style is that I'm a Southerner, right? Elizabeth alluded to it a second ago. And you will likely find a lot of y'alls in my conversation. And so forgive me up front, but don't worry, I got you covered because I got slides. So in the moments when you don't understand what I'm saying, gotta read. But I'll tell you that the most important things that I bet even you probably notice very quickly in communication styles, it really lies in the tone of your voice, the technique that you use to engage, and how you resonate or touch, right? How you touch people in the ways that you communicate. And I really believe that if you can kind of master being a listener, you can also master the way that you deploy tone, touch, and technique in your style. And the application is really easy. At least I'm gonna hopefully break it down to you where you walk away feeling like it's really easy, right? Um, how about something really as simple as stating your opinion in the form of a question, as opposed to just shooting people down immediately as you engage in meetings. And a technique that I call looping, in which you loop what you're saying to what others before you have said as a way of bringing people in. And then also, how about not even assuming that everybody knows what's going on? How about a very solid thing as just giving people background and context? That's a very simple thing that we can do in meetings so that you're not assuming that everyone is at the level of understanding that you are. So, those are really like some really small, really nuanced things that you can build into the way that you meet and manage and engage with people inside of meetings that will allow a more inclusive approach. But just for starters, right, this class focuses on kind of graceful communication practices, right? Given the fact that meetings for us in our workplace is our primary space of engagement, right? We're going to use what I'm calling a meeting circle, right? So establishing a meeting circle is circle infers that it's a space with it's a loop, it's closed, it's safe. And I hope as we go through this, right, that you kind of clearly see how you in your workplace can establish meeting circles. But before that, I want to start by just illustrating for you like why we're going down this pathway and hopefully why you can get on board and see the value of doing it inside of your workplace, right? we've all been a part of some meetings where some cringeworthy stuff has maybe been said or done, and hopefully it wasn't directed to you. But if it was directed to you, then you intimately know what it's like to be a part of an embarrassing situation. But either way, it's really a space for negative feelings to be cropped up when there are cringeworthy things that happen inside of meetings. And I think that we all get a little bit preoccupied when we are seeing things or a part of things that that are not really germane to the way that we feel like things should be done. And so in that moment, really, it's the human desire that really to wants you. You have a sense of being included, right? It's that's a natural human a human sense. And so what I want to, illustrate for you today is there's been really a journey of how inside of the workplace we talk about inclusion. And it's really, say, illustrated here. The goal for us is to really examine it through inclusive practices because historically, right, we've done some segregation, we've been excluded, to some degree. And so, but now what it is to be included is for all of us to have a way to feel to be a part of something and to generate something that's a solid output. And the thing that says that you can do that is really to truly feel included. And you'll find that within meetings, a recent study indicated that 75% of the conversation that happens in meetings happens with men. And 33% of those times, the women are interrupted by the men. And so there are a lot of imbalances that's occurring in meetings. They're not all kind of gender specific or race specific. There is really something as nuanced as introverts and extroverts, right? How do you include them in meetings? People who are, this was kind of pre COVID, but people who are in the office and people who are calling in on the phone, right? So there are all types of dimensions of difference occurring inside of the microcosm of a meeting. And so it's really a purposeful, or you have to be very intentional about including folks in your meeting. And there's more of it has to be more of a bridge to a more robust experience. But just know that the meetings for you can become a wonderful window to how you build real, true, inclusive culture inside of your workplace. And so I definitely things like a very basic again, who you actually invite to the meeting, being exclusionary, like not inviting some people and inviting others. Were you explanatory about what it was that you're going to discuss in your meeting, like meeting objective and key takeaways, so that people can come to it and come with their the understanding or the value so that they can be recognized and heard in meetings. That comes a lot from having confidence in the content that's going to be shared. And the way that you can clearly bring that in is to be just to simply just let them know up front. How about just telling, how about just having a way of introducing folks as you begin your meeting, getting an understanding if there are folks here who don't know each other. And also giving credit as people are engaging. Oh, thank you for that input, because I think it could be a solid way forward for us. That's a very easy thing to do, but it really is having a nature of making sure that you let people know that they are heard, seen, and what they're saying is valuable. So here's how we're going to make that happen. So I shared with you that it's purely, this is hopefully a construct that is simple enough that you can think about it in this way, that creating a sense of belonging, learning how to communicate, and then out of that, you get major contributions, right? I think it's easy, but I also wanted to illustrate it in a way that hopefully lands for you. But not only that, that you can remember and share with others. Because the fact is that when you develop high trust and people feel that they're treated fairly and they're supported, their insecurities dissipate, right? And so if you can make that happen inside of a meeting, you can the people who are engaged can spend time and their time and energy contributing instead of worrying about is it safe to share, because the fact is that companies with 10,000 more employees or more, they see a 42 million dollar increase if they have deeply engaged employees. And so how are you going to bring that engagement to, to the forefront? If meetings are in fact your major way of engaging with employees and or teammates, then hey, I think you need to get that piece right. But before we, go forward with the main kind of tips that I want to share with you, I want to bring us back to the space of the times in your life in which you may not have actually had a sense of belonging. And I want to do that because sometimes the more emotional things, people feel like they can't connect to those. But I want to tell you that there have been times for all of us in which we felt that we did not belong. And so, in order to do that, I want to draw you back to that moment when you were in high school, because hopefully, all of us had something like this occur or witnessed it. And you can think about the emotional impact, but you were looking around for a place to sit at the lunch table and you saw others scoot in, right? So they wouldn't let you in, or you saw some whispering or pointing, right? Something that said to you that you were not welcome here or you were not like us. And that's a very exclusive practice, right? So, or as my husband says, it's that you can't sit with us, right? You can't sit with us, right? And so we all, in a very germane way, knows what it feels like to be excluded. Or how about being at a conference and you don't know anyone there and you have to find a way to engage, right? You're an outsider and you're trying to find ways to connect with others so that you can once again feel included. I got a surefire way that I do whenever I'm at a conference. I always look for someone who shares my gender or my race as an easy in, and then I always then, because women, we do this, right? We rock the best shoes. So I'll go in and I'll start with a, hey, I love your shoes. And then there's the opener. But the thing is that's because the human nature is seeking a way to be included. And this is a thing that doesn't go away for any of us. We're all doing it to some degree. How about this? Meeting your partner's parents or family for the first time. That piece, oh my goodness, just waiting for that one cousin or sister to say, oh, hey, or welcome to the family, or give me a hug or something. This happened to all of us, right? So I think that I want to, bring you back to those moments and those feelings so that you can understand what it is to not belong, so that you can clearly see in those moments what you would have liked someone to do. And then are you prepared to do that for someone inside of a meeting? Because we all know what it feels like to be excluded. So are you the one that's going to create a sense of belonging in the ways, whatever ways that is comfortable and common to you to actually do it, right? Because acknowledgement is usually very key in this stage as creating a sense of belonging. Oops, sorry, guys, I went backwards. The next one is, as you can see, right, the communication. It's such a big one, right? We are all communicating to some degree all the time, verbally and non-verbally. And I want to illustrate the act of communicating through something very kind of simple to most of us. How about that parent child relationship? No matter where you are in that space, parent child. But do you remember how when your parents or your caretaker may have called your name and you could always tell with the tone of their voice whether you were about to be celebrated or excommunicated? So, legitimately, right? I could always tell in the tone in which my parents took, like, and the way and the technique, the way they said my name. So if I ever heard my full name, I know this is not going to be good. Again, very simple, but just to think about it in that kind of simplistic way, again, helps you to think about it in a way that now, can you do that? Can you serve others inside of a meeting by the way that you talk about it, the way that you say it? So when I hear my mom say, Shawnee, that's my nickname, Shawnee, I know all is good and the sound. But when she says Chantel Nicole Lewis, that's my maiden name. When I hear my full name and I hear it in that tone, I know that it's not good. And so just like legitimately, it's something that we're all kind of akin to. So think about it like that in the way that you talk to others inside of the workplace, right? Like even now, my mom, she's incorporated my maiden name. So she says Chantel Nicole Thomas, right? If I hear that during the holidays, that means that I'm probably burning the bread or something, or to some degree that I'm making some mistake. So temper or the way that you're engaging with people is very indicative of what it is that you're trying to communicate. And so if you're trying to go the pathway of getting the most from people, then you have to manage against the way that you're positioning things, the way you're saying your words, the way that you're even in a verbal and nonverbal way, the way you're engaging. Um, and I know that we can all tell, especially in this virtual environment in which everybody's face is on, Zoom calls and everybody's face is front and center and you can see them all at one time. It's beautiful for engagement. But what's always a giveaway are the people who are disengaged. So the people who are waiting on you to just be done with your conversation or your presentation because their face is like instead of right? So it's verbal, it's nonverbal, but you're seeing these cues, and the really key thing is to align those things um, with aligning them with the people and the task based upon the way they're communicating or engaging with you. Because the hallmarks of effective communication, right, is aligning, right? You're aligning in the way that you're doing it, the discipline that the discipline that you're applying, and the people that you're engaging along the way. So there's great alignment in this space right here. The next one, right? This is the one where it's so important. Oh, I did it again, guys. I'm working with my new clicker. So the way that we are creating that sense of belonging and the way we're communicating is essential for this piece, right? All of us are aligned to some key performance indicators that we're supposed to deliver for our job, and in order to do that, you have to get the most best out of everyone. And people can't do that if they don't have the first two, right? If they don't have that sense of safety as they engage with you and other teammates. And so, how about if you want the best from folks and you want to drive contributions, how about just doing something very simple? Is not creating otherness, because what happens is that sense of defensiveness, which happens to all of us humans, right? If we don't feel like we're chosen or if we don't feel like we're heard, what's happening is that we get that wall up. And when you have that wall, you tend to not want to contribute. and I'll go ahead and raise my hand and admit that, like I've had those moments when I knew that I should share that I might know this particular piece of information that might be a game changer. I'll hold it close to the vest because I might have had some other interruptive behavior happen or a sense of negativity happen in the course of that meeting. I'm so guilty, and I bet there are some other hands that could go up too, feeling that sense of guilt for doing that. But that really is because you just did not experience that safety in the creation of that meeting circle that made you want to contribute, right? And it's so important because it really prevents us from taking that leap, because we won't take the leap again. This is not just you or I. We won't take that leap if we don't feel safe. And so you can rest assured that what you might be experiencing in that moment, that sense of otherness, that sense of defensiveness, etc., it's not new. But I do think it's possible to tame it. By taming it, I'm saying like let's go back to just thinking about this in the construct of the meeting circle, right? So I'll tell you that there are a lot of kind of effective things that you can do to create this circle, right? There are um, we if you can think about it, go back to those moments back in the lunchroom when the person may have scooted over because they didn't want you to sit. Wouldn't it have been just as easy to scoot over and leave a spot and do this right here and say, "Come sit next to me"? Even today, in in this day and age, we're all grown ups in meetings, etc. The same thing. We could do that for others, right? You see them walk into the meeting, I saved your seat. Again, sense of belonging. And the reason why we want to do things like this is because we simply, right, want to create a sense of humanity, empathy, be very observant about what's going on inside of the meeting. I told you earlier that that's something that I naturally did because I'm just interested for some reason in other people's comfort, right? So I'm interested in seeing what someone is doing and finding ways to include them or bring them in. And I bet for you all, you have the ability to do it too. You can tell when your partner is upset with you without any verbal information. You can kind of see it in the way that they move or the way they engage, right? And so I encourage you because we bring our full selves to work when we are in feel comfortable in a safe environment, and all of the things that we know that are germane to our identity we bring with us, right? So skill sets like knowing how and when to position a question. Who should I position this question to? Who's the one that's going to be the one that's likely to not make me feel insulted when I introduce a new idea? Well, all that is you being observant and you knowing when you feel heard and what you say kind of matters, right? So that all comes from that sense of belonging. So hopefully you see how important it is to bring this into your meetings and how you engage um, and communicating. Here we go. Back to this piece. This is the one that's so important. I know that we can all hearken back to a manager that may have dropped their heads and said, "I can't believe that you didn't do this or you don't know this," right? That's a real thing. That's something that's as a communication technique that now has informed all of the other players in the room that you don't have your stuff together, right? And then that goes back, and now you likely don't feel safe to contribute because you've already been pointed out or marginalized in some way. Don't do that to others. And so there's a way to remain engaged, to really clearly communicate without undressing people. That's what we call it in the South. I'm about to undress you. That's that coming down. I'm about to call you out. But I encourage us to find ways. I think it's a very common thing to say now about being called out. I heard very recently, I was on another call, another webinar, and someone said the best statement, and I'm going to use it from here on in. I'm going to give it to you so that maybe you can use it too. Instead of calling people out, call them in. And by calling someone in, instead of saying, "Yeah, you don't know that," that's a call out. How about calling them in by saying something? Oh yeah, I was thinking that maybe we can all use some help in that area. Maybe we go back to that, that page that we covered last time and maybe uncover what it was that everyone knew or maybe didn't understand. That's a call in. Now everyone feels like they can contribute. Everyone feels like there's safety in this space. It's just so important, right? Touch, tone, and technique. And I'm telling you, like, the reason why this is so important to get is because of that last piece of the circle, contribution, right? The contribution is so important because that's how we're all, right, getting measured. What did you do for the team? What did you deliver for the business? We're all getting measured like that. So why not master the sense of belonging and communicating so that you can get more from the team that you're aligned with, either the team that reports to you or your own teammates, right? Um, just techniques for creating the really good team dynamics, um, and and it can be simply done by something like pairing people together. If you know that Mary isn't really good at charts, but Sue is, how about pairing them together so that you get the best of both worlds and you're creating a safe team environment because you've somehow been able to communicate that I know that's a space that you might not be operating at your strength, but somebody else knows that and can teach you, or somebody else knows that and can fill in so that you both bring your gifts and talents to the table. That's acknowledgement. People want that, right? They want to be assured that you're acting in their best interest in the way that you're engaging, even down to the way that you're motivating and inspiring others, who you assign projects to, who and how. Is just really important to just figure out like how to get that right and how to have really inclusive practices for doing that. And I have a couple of tips later on to do that. And eliciting and giving feedback. Again, it's something that's really important. So learning how um, to 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 say things in a way that allows people to even feel comfortable giving feedback. I've been in meetings before where I've already been undressed. I've been called out, right? And so now I no longer feel right even giving my feedback. And even that feedback could be really critical, right? I could know the time that, X vendor shuts down and we're trying to, get something done, but I hold that information back. That, that is the way that contributions go left and you get no contributions, right? And things that are super important to moving the business forward, things that are critical to moving the business forward. So sometimes it's not as simple as I'm just going to like it could be something like not just telling somebody where the coffee maker is, right? These are real things that are, could be things that move the business forward. But I'm going to tell you, I'm going to liken the fact that you might not tell them what time the supplier shuts down to the telling them where the coffee is, because it all comes back to that sense of belonging. They live in the same space. And so if you're engaging with people who you don't feel that sense of belonging, you're going to hold all of that coffee and the supplier. So it lives in the same space because we're all human, right? And so we're all looking for assurance of our value and our value to the business. It's key. So here's my checklist. Super, super easy. And I hope everyone can kind of walk away. I'm going to give you this checklist, by the way. I hope everyone can walk away with, just remembering these three things and the circle, because this is I would say that maybe it's a common practice, or maybe it's a moment to level up. And maybe you can be the one that, insert some of this inclusive behavior in your workplace. But how about, I shared this one earlier. Who'd you invite to the meeting? When you exclude people and people see that you exclude people, it invites a sense of, divisiveness. Why do that if you're trying to get people to contribute at their highest level? Um, did you include the meeting purpose and some of the key takeaways so that I can come to the meeting feeling like I'm ready and prepared to contribute? Because if I don't even know, I've gotten to meetings before. Have you? You got into meetings and you look around and you're like, why are we here? This has happened to me countless times, and I'm sure it's happened to you too. But that's because just very early on, someone just sends you a meeting invite, but didn't bother to tell you what is it that we're meeting about. And what that does is constrict what it is that you can contribute, where you may have spent the first, 10 minutes before that meeting going over information that you think is important to the outcome. You didn't have the opportunity to do that, and so now you feel like you cannot be confident and contribute because it's literally you didn't even know what it was about. So just very important, some basic things. Acknowledge people's comments when they give them. Don't call them out, call them in, right? So when people say something very simple, oh, yeah, Ruth, that's a really good idea. I think that that could really, maybe something you and Mary could work on to get that done. Acknowledgement, super important, because when people feel like they're not heard, they feel devalued. And I'm telling you this, and you likely, I know you know this, because we are our own, lab rats. It's happened to us. And so I'm calling you in to tell you, don't let it happen on your watch. Be the one that is drawing in this behavior so that others can follow suit, right? Introducing people. If you know that, starting a meeting, you're like, everyone know each other here, you get the heads up, you can move on. But if not, spend 5 minutes. This is Mary. She runs, the data analytics for the team. This is Sue. She's got us covered with communications. Just do it. Do that as a way to level set so people know not only what you're expecting them to bring, but then they feel seen. Addressing people by their name. Sue, Mary, Ruth, right? Do that, because now it means that whomever is leading the meeting or driving most of the input, you're simply just acknowledging them because you know their name. I know I feel more comfortable in rooms in which people actually say Chantel, and really when they say it right, that's really exciting. My mom gave me a hard one. So when you get to thinking about how it is then that you're going to communicate, be very conscious about deferring to others and not just taking over the meeting. Be very conscious about when you feel yourself maybe taking up that 10%, 20%, 30%. Make sure that you're engaging the person that maybe drove the meeting or asked for this to happen. Be very in your approach. Make sure you defer to the one who started the meeting, defer to the people who are making the final decisions. This piece is just so important. And then looping together the points so that you're bringing together the things that other people have already discussed. Because now you're making almost your roadmap for when you get to the contributions. You're letting people see that you've heard what they're said. You see the value in it. You're looping it together. You're basically constructing that project management. Aligning others, right, people to the projects and goals. This one's like so important because it's the thing that's moving it forward to contributing, but you've called on the people who expressed as you went on. And I think one of the other things is the folks when I say that there are dimensions of diversity. And so people often think that it's just aligned with gender and race, but I again back to the thing about the ones that are introverts and extroverts, people who are on the phone versus the ones that are in the office when we finally get back in the office, right? There are ways that you can, be sure to call them in. You can say things like, hey, Mary on the phone, anybody on the phone have anything to add? Like, or, like there are ways that you can definitely make sure that you're inclusive. Even the way that you engage people as they express their ideas. Because if you demonstrate for people that they can feel safe expressing their ideas instead of just shutting people down, there's a phrase that I use all the time, and I hear my manager use it all the time. It gives me warm and fuzzies. I just love it. Tell me more. Tell me more. Did that just not sound like what it is that you're saying is super important? And I just want to learn more about it, even if I disagree. But if I start with, tell me more, that'll allow the other person to maybe express and they might be flushing out their idea as they're talking. But then it also allows me to, agree or dissent. But starting with that expression of tell me more, I'm telling y'all is solid. Because sometimes, like, even I'm telling you this, but I've also been the recipient of this. I just had a meeting with my manager today, and it was just so embracing to say the words tell me more, right? Because it says that I want to hear more. And then now, as people talk about whatever it is, their idea, you can do that kind of giving them an opportunity to banter back and forth and maybe align with them or not. But at least you've done the due diligence of hearing folks out. So important. Um, and here it is. This is the $50,000. I should say I was going to say question, but this is the answer. $50,000 answer. Like when you do the work of creating that safety in that meeting circle through the sense of belonging, communicating effectively in tone, technique, and touch, you get these contributors. You get these contributors, people who feel safe contributing to the meeting, people who feel safe sharing their ideas, people who feel safe that whatever they say is going to be heard in a very profound way because you're interested in their contributions, right? This is really important. So because now we're getting closer to the KPIs, we're getting closer to the outputs, we're getting closer to the project having people's names on it and us being able to deliver back to the business. This is it. So you got to create that sense of belonging and do it in a really solid way in the way you communicate, so that you can get those contributors. And how about this? Pack somebody else's parachute. So this is not just um, like looking to get, right? But what are you looking to give? So I definitely can, if I can encourage you to figure out ways that you're giving, packing somebody else's parachute in the way that you're expressing. Oh, you know what? Carl did give me that idea the other day as we was by the water fountain back in the days when we were in the office. But he did share that idea with me, and I think that Carl, it might be a good idea to share it here with the larger group. That's packing somebody else's parachute. Do that because now that drives greater contribution. And volunteer to lead on you. Volunteer to lead. Volunteer to push something forward. And that takes all of us, finding ways to contribute. But do that. And if you're leading a meeting, this one is something that I just added this one to my slide deck because I saw a manager do this the other day. She assigned each one of the people in her team to lead the team meeting. So she rotated. So they have a weekly team meeting, and someone different is assigned on the team to leading that meeting. Oh, how empowering, because that means that if you're a person that is likely, an introvert, then there's going to come a time where you get a voice and you get to lead the team meeting. And so just doing something very simple as rotating team members in the meeting, like who's leading it. So as a leader, you may not necessarily have to do it all the time, but there is some division of labor. But then that also is an opportunity for people to contribute and to be on the stage so that they can show others how well they do it. So I hope for you that this has been illuminating, and that you have some solid tips that you can go forward and begin to use the word include in your meetings so that you can begin to develop a meeting circle. Because, what's really important is exclusion happens, it happens all the time. And I hope that you find ways to invite employees to the table, because the more that we can get others to add in to contribute, it's going to increase the value of that meeting. I've also been to meetings where I've sat through it for 30 minutes and I can't even figure out like why were we here. I know some of y'all too, right? You can maybe put it in the chat window if you agree. like why were we here? So again, but that comes back to being disciplined about maybe even doing some of these very pragmatic things so that you're not, so that's not going left. But I wholeheartedly believe that implementing these tools are really going to allow your meetings to run in a really in a way that says that I hear you, I see you, and what you're saying matters. And I'll tell you what, if you're here today, then that means that you have a level of awareness that this is something that you likely need to do or want to do as a part of your organization, and implement behaviors that work, because I think that we all have to work towards finding ways to be included in our workplace. Uh, that's it. Elizabeth, are you back on? Is there anything that you want to do to, should I take questions or what?
Yeah,
You good?
we
Okay.
have a little bit of time.
Okay.
Does any of the panelists have any questions about the information that Chantel has shared today?
hmm Or unless you want to tell me a story of how you felt excluded and what you're going to do to change that in your workplace. I'm open to that too. Because I do think that we all can definitely arm ourselves with ways to make it happen.
Bernadette's asking if people will have access to the recording. Yes, we're going to work to getting that out um, to the attendees. Aaron says, I like that you called out how easy it is for introverts to be inadvertently silenced.
Ah, yes. I've seen it done. Like there's a thing, like even when you have a way of being an observant, I think that there are all kind of ways that we all lapse into maybe not doing all the great things, but hopefully having this opportunity to bring it to the forefront makes us all aware, right?
Mhm.
Bring them in.
Mhm. Yeah, no, there's times where I felt excluded. I used to work in the construction industry, which
Ooh.
is very heavily dominated by men, and so sometimes I was like kind of like a project manager assistant kind of thing, and
Mhm.
I just show up to the table and people just talk over me, and I'd be like, this is not good. And I was like,
75%
I
of
know I'm
meetings are
smarter than
dominated
this.
by
Like,
men. Yeah. I
right.
know. And I think that's the thing when I say about the defensiveness, like I'm smarter than them. Like, why am I not getting an opportunity to speak? Right. It's that thing, it begins to make you guard the knowledge that you have. And when you're not sharing the knowledge that you have that's germane to pushing the business forward, then the business has lost something, right? Because they
Yeah.
didn't get that useful information that you have. And so I know, like, we all totally fall prey to that. I know I am. I'm whispering.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay, there's another question in the chat. How do you navigate meetings where specific people just dominate?
yeah, I know. I've heard that one before, and it's happened to me as well. I think that that technique that I tell you about calling people's name, use it for good and for moments when you need to help people pivot, right? So, like when you start, like your input or your conversations are wanting to call people in, call their name. Elizabeth, I really think that some of the things that I shared in last week's meeting could be the thing that takes us forward to the next level. Share, allow me to share it, like saying things like that. I use a technique. So when we were in face to face meetings, I used to do things like moving forward. Doesn't that do something? Like, look at that. Like, just the nonverbal activity of just moving your body in position because you
Mhm.
know that you have something to say, calling people, by name, that saying that I recognize that you are maybe dominating, what's happening in this meeting. So I'm going to defer to you in that moment because I said, Elizabeth, so that's stopping. And then now you go on and say what it is that you have to say. So call you can use the name calling for affirmation that I see you, and you can use name calling for affirmation that I see you.
Right. No, that's
Yeah.
great. It's really
Yeah.
good. Alma had a question. What is the best way to approach this when you do not have a higher role in the company?
Yeah, start by knowing that you're there because you should be valued in what you have, what you know is important for the business. So start there. When I talked about in the beginning of taking a seat at the table, that's real. Taking a seat at the table, we like those words from Sheryl Sandberg, right? Take your seat at the table. That's real. So you're here because somebody hired you because what you have to give is super important. So don't forget that every single day in every single motion. And so when you get there, make sure you don't do this, Alma. Don't raise your hand. Don't raise your hand because what you're doing is asking for permission to speak. So,
Mhm.
in all that you do in meetings, virtual as well as in person, don't raise your hand. So I would definitely tell you when you do things like taking your place, the areas in which you feel like you can contribute, loop to others, especially others that you feel like were maybe dominating the meeting or had a lot to share. Say that. Say, oh yeah, Elizabeth, what you said just a couple seconds ago, like I think that I can maybe add on to that. Like do that. And so what that does is in those moments where you feel like maybe you're a young player in the game, what that does is you've now aligned yourself with a person that may have the more mature role or has a more dominant place in the meeting. Use the looping technique. Use it in your favor.
Mm, awesome. I have one more question from Jackie Rivera. She said, what kind of engagement programs do you recommend that creates an environment of belonging and inclusion?
I'll tell you kind of where to start. So I found right here on the resources this team playbook. when you go here, it has and I said, this is actually this is a technology vendor that I think they have a software that allows teams to interact, live to some degree. It's not to the level of Slack, but it's some other version of it. But it's so good. Their particular team playbooks. I go there, look at this because I'm telling you, like there are so many. I feel like they have over 40 or 50 really good pieces of information to help you. Go start there. And if you feel like you have more questions and want to do more, email me, and we can explore together.
Awesome. Chantel, this was really great. Thank you so
Good,
much.
good.
And
Thank you.
I'm really glad that the attendees were very engaging and asking good questions. And yes,
Yeah.
please feel free to, reach out to Chantel. She's a great communicator and she has like, breadth of knowledge and a great
Mhm,
mentor.
mhm.
Um, Again, Chantel, thank you so much.
Thank
And
you, Elizabeth, for inviting me because I know this is your baby, Career Mingle, and so I know all of us who are in it with you in this first virtual hurrah, like you've given us the
yeah,
ability to share, and that means that you trusted us to make your baby beautiful. And so thank you for allowing me to do that. Mhm.
yes, yes. Thank you to all the speakers and also all the attendees who, just jumped out on a leap of faith, trusting that this would be a great event. And thank you for
Mhm.
supporting like throughout the duration of the conference. So,
Mhm. Yep,
awesome.
it was great. Thank you
Awesome.
guys. I appreciate it. Mhm.
Bye.
Bye, Elizabeth.